longtime political fixture Jeff Perilou.
I mean, it's always unusual. You expect your elected officials to be, especially people that are upholding the law, to have the highest level of integrity. To see something like this is certainly unusual and disappointing.
The indictment sexual battery.
Anytime you have multiple people making allegations like this, it certainly bolsters the state's case. In this situation, you don't have just two, you have three, which, of course, makes it even more difficult for him.
Perilou stepped off the bench last month when allegations first will likely be impacted as well.
This is going to affect a lot of people, and it's very sad that it came to this, and that that this was going on if it in fact was.
Accusations made against him. Attorney Bobby Hjortsberg says the company may face certain civil and criminal liabilities.
They may even change the name that they operate under. And again, it would depend on who else was involved. What other people within the company knew about it, if they endorsed this type of behavior. Was it just John Besh? I mean, there's a lot of questions that have to be answered, but it's certainly a very bad day for, the Besh group.
All that changed.
And anytime someone, behaves in that manner, the judge would almost be forced, to have a hearing to determine whether or not that individual will be competent to go forward with the trial.
Legal analyst Bobby Hjortsberg says most of the weight in making that determination falls on expert testimony of doctors and psychiatrists, two of whom testified for the defense, the other two for the prosecution. While the state's doctors said they believed boys planned the court outburst,
they call it malingering when someone is intentionally trying to act as if they're incompetent.
Judge Herman still found boys to be incompetent. Belfield says he understands why.
The judge did what she was supposed to do to protect the record, because we don't want to do this twice.
If the judge were to make the wrong decision and somehow it comes back on appeal that, that this individual was not competent to stand trial despite the fact the judge ruling that he was, then of course that could have appeal implications and would certainly delay justice for the family.
Now, Hjortsberg says it will be up to doctors at a state-run facility in East Feliciana Parish to decide if and when boys' competency is restored. Thing is, there's also such thing as unrestorably incompetent, which means boys would never be fit for trial.
And at that point, they would remain in the mental institution until the judge determined that they were, safe to come back out into society.
Holloway's uncle believes justice will be served, even though it may take some time. He said what's most alarming is that Boys was able to sneak feces into the courtroom. He worries it could be a weapon next time. Shelley.
Dr. Ali Sadehi filed this civil lawsuit last month against Jason Adams. Both men are already involved in separate criminal cases. Sadehi's charged with raping his former wife, and Adams is accused in a fatal Lamborghini crash. In a bizarre twist, the Lamborghini driven by Adams was leased to Dr. Sadehi.
Obviously, that didn't just happen because they, had, a loose connection to each other. You wouldn't let someone drive your, car like that unless you had, I would imagine, unless it had some relationship with them.
According to the civil suit, Adams, through his business, Elite Investment Group, handled the books for Dr. Sadehi's plastic surgery firm.
Essentially, Jason Adams was managing all of his finances, was keeping his books, and he's essentially saying that he converted $3.7 million for his own use.
Also in the lawsuit, Dr. Sadehi alleges Adam forged his signature on a $2 million check drawn from the doctor's account. Sadehi alleges he confronted Adams about it, and Adams promised to repay the $2 million, but never did. The lawsuit goes on to say Adams used the money to purchase property in Hammond. Adams' attorney, David Carcel, says he filed this response to the lawsuit today in court.
It's really more so an answer to the original suit saying this is actually where this money came from. This is why these payments were made, so on and so forth.
According to the response, Sadehi engaged Adams to help him with a very sensitive matter as a result of an intimate sexual relationship that Sadehi had with his office manager. It goes on to say Sadehi directed Adams to purchase a new computer for the employee and to write checks amounting to $357,000.
That severance package, instead of being paid out of the doctor's account, was paid out of Mr. Adams' account, and then the doctor reimbursed him.
As for the
alleged victim is now 45 years old, and had the case gone to trial, one criminal defense attorney says testimony promised to be rough.
Terribly, because all the details are going to come out in sworn testimony, and that's going to be public knowledge, and it's difficult.
Dozens of court documents were filed in Orleans Civil Court over the past 2 years, and on Friday, the advocate reports a settlement had been reached, something the Archdiocese of New Orleans did 2 months ago when it settled another abuse case for $500,000, finding credible evidence against former deacon George Brignac. Did you molest any boys, sir?
No.
The Catholic Church certainly has the resources to settle the cases, and it would be in their best interest to do so.
2 probationary New Orleans police officers entered municipal court through a side door to appear before a judge for the first time, the day after they were arrested for allegedly beating Jorge Gomez.
I was trying to move, and he was like, no, you don't go anywhere.
The officers Spencer Sutton and John Galman entered not guilty pleas to misdemeanor simple battery charges, which could be upgraded later.
We're still very early on in this case. We don't have a lot of information about what exactly the injuries are. You're going to need reports from doctors and a lot more analysis that has to be done before you would increase those charges to second-degree battery, which, of course, requires great bodily harm.
Gomez was rushed to the hospital where his wounds were stitched up, as well as being treated for other injuries after the beating early Tuesday morning at the Mid-City Yacht Club bar.
I was trying to play cool because she said that she was going to call the cops.
There have been a number of irregularities in this case so far. First, the officers were released last night on their own recognizance, and that sparked protests from the assistant district attorney. Though the assistant district attorney said the release before any court hearing was illegal, outside court, the officer's attorney, Jake Lemon, saw it differently. Was there anything illegal about the ROR, sir? No, there wasn't. Some question whether the misdemeanor charges are serious enough.
Possibly have the DA's office review any medical records, anything associated with the case to determine how serious the injuries were. So potentially reviewing records that already exist. But yes, it would be within the exclusive right of the district attorney to bring higher charges in this case.
After being released last night on a recognizance bond, the municipal court judge today set bond for the officers at $1,500 each as the DA reviews the case.
Just because you're a police officer, you should be held to the same standard as everyone else. In fact, you should be held to a higher standard because of the amount of power that you have.
The officers...
I don't think that what he did was wrong at all, especially not legally.
New Orleans attorney Bobby Hjortsberg says the agent has no right to refuse a passenger for recording an experience.
It's a public place. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He didn't break any laws. He was simply just trying to document what was happening.
I did not give him permission, and that is our right as an employee for the airline.
A Jefferson Parish Sheriff's deputy approached Ozo about the exchange and made comments about Ozo's condition.
Can I at least keep this recording?
Sir, you have the right to do whatever you want. It's a public space. Have you been drinking?
Obviously.
Obviously. You've been drinking a lot, right?
No.
You smell like alcohol.
No, not a lot.
Ozo claims he only drank 2 beers before the exchange with the United agent.
Either you can leave the terminal peacefully, or you can be arrested for public intoxication.
United Airlines does have a policy where they can refuse a passenger based on their intoxication levels and if they feel that that passenger is a threat to other passengers. However, in the video, the agent never refers to the passenger's intoxication level, and the airline doesn't mention it in its statement. Tuesday, United Airlines said the video does not reflect the positive customer experience we strive to offer, and for that, we apologize. We are reviewing the situation, including talking with Mr. Ozo and our employees to better understand what happened. Hjortsberg says the policy for refusing based on intoxication is a gray area because passengers are allowed to drink but not be belligerent.
I just think that this is, obviously another example of, an airline attendant, getting too upset too quickly. And I realize that they have a very stressful job and, they're always getting a lot of complaints from people. But I think a little bit more patience, especially in this situation, would have gone a long way.
Granted, because of time frame deadlines, but Simmons' attorney disagrees.
Well, so ultimately the state is arguing, as they would in every case of this nature, that this post-conviction application has prescribed, meaning that he's run out of time to file it. And are some exceptions to that rule and some exceptions that would allow him to file this motion for post-conviction application after he's already filed previous ones and after the boilerplate time limitations have run. We're arguing that his case fits within one of those exceptions, and of course the state is arguing that his case does not fit within one of those exceptions.
If the case moves forward, it will ultimately be decided on October 2nd. If things don't go in Simmons' favor, his attorney tells us he plans to appeal.
Alleged attempted suicide could lead to a mistrial.
So it's a difficult situation for both sides, really. The judge could just declare a mistrial and tell them that they have to start the entire trial over. It's possible, it's within the judge's discretion to declare a mistrial for just that defendant and then have the other two defendants continue to proceed with the case.
Badeau's family calls it a slap on the wrist.
So basically, she's going to walk away, and it's just ridiculous.
They point to the police report that states Martin was distracted while talking on her phone.
Well, it's not illegal to talk on a cell phone while you're driving.
Attorney Robert Hjortsberg tells Fox 8 even though it's not illegal to talk on a cell phone while behind the wheel, there are still ways to be charged with negligent homicide. But it's a difficult call for the district attorney to make.
It requires such a disregard for the interests of others that the individual's conduct was a gross deviation below the standard of care that a reasonable individual would exercise under the similar circumstances.
Local lawyer Bobby Hjortsberg is no stranger to working on and running local campaigns for New Orleans-based candidates. So this report by the legislative auditor comes as no surprise to him.
I've always thought that things were run very loose in the clerk's office.
And it appears state auditors feel the same way. This report says Arthur Morrell spent almost $80,000 in public funds on meals, gifts, celebrations, and nonprofit donations, which was not how the money was intended to be used. It also says he put $7,000 on a credit card, all of which was personal. All are potential violations of state law, the report says.
Once you do things a certain way for a certain period of time, you just feel like you can get away with it. This is how I've always done it. I've always run the office this way. I've always done things this way, and nothing's ever happened before. And so I imagine he got the sense that he could get away with it, or that it wasn't that important.
The audit also says Morrell.
We were set for a motion to recuse Judge Spiro, who is currently assigned the case. There's some potential issues with him being on the case because of his association with the district attorney's office and with Eddie Knoll, who initially prosecuted this case. And so we want to litigate those issues before we even get to the next step, which is hearing the actual post-conviction motion that was filed. That was set to be heard today. I came down last night from New Orleans and was here at 8:30 this morning, and we were informed that Mr. Simmons was not brought to the court, that he was not transported. Angola alleges that there was no writ that was filed. That seems to be incorrect based upon the documents that we've seen. The court did, in fact, send them a notice of appearance. They spoke to him, to Angola yesterday. Angola assured us that he was going to be here. In fact, my office also contacted them to ensure that he was going to be here because there's a lot of people, including myself, who've come from all over the place in order to be here to support him. So it's a little disheartening, but it's not a loss. And in this case, is ultimately, I'm confident is going to result in his freedom. There's so many troubling things in this case. Yet, in 40 years, Mr. Simmons has never sat in a courtroom throughout this entire appeals process. So it's hard to believe at this point that any rational individual involved in the justice system cannot see the injustice that has been done over and over and over again.